Ritesh, welcome to this conversation. It's something that I've been meaning for us to get together on, and I'm glad that it's finally taken shape. As a lawyer myself, having a conversation with an accomplished lawyer like you is something that I'm really looking forward to. So thank you for making time for this.
Pleasure to be here, Antony.
So Ritesh, you run the legal department for one of the most accomplished media brands in the country. Right? And you're managing between broadcast, OTT, social media. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what it means to toggle between as the head of legal and as a member of the management team, what it means to toggle between all these multiple businesses and what that means for you as a lawyer?
Well, I've never thought about it because OTT business and broadcasting in many ways are complementary to each other.
Yes.
And social media is just an extension where you put on your content. But if you look at the business model, it's at the end of the day content, which is being produced and put on these platforms. And the entire focus is on to get it right from business point of view, and even from legal point of view. You don't want any reputational risk coming or any violation of the law, regulation.
Sure.
So that's the legal part of it. And at the management part, it's always the partnerships that you get into with the business heads, right at the inception, contributing from the potential risks and even sharing your ideas with them. And I think at the board level, at the management level, that's where I focus on the partnerships and across these businesses, in short, getting the content right, not only from business point of view, but from the risk mitigation point of view as well.
I think it's true for all businesses today because of the way, at the speed at which technology is changing all of our lives, right? And media is no exception. I think you've been in Sony long enough to know or to have seen the change from, let's say, being a traditional media organization to one that is more tech and digital driven, right? What's that transition been like? And is there something that, as you've seen the transition happen over the years, has it kind of been seamless, or has it surprised you, caught you off guard, saying, my God, this is what's happening?
That's very interesting. You see, when we look at the traditional broadcast, it's regimented and heavily regulated. To even start a television channel, you need a license from the MIB.
Yes.
Without that, you can't enter into this industry. So that barrier is not there in the OTT. Now, the content is regulated thanks to the Cable Television Act. And the distribution of that content through the television channel is heavily regulated. You will not find any parallel to the kind of regulation that we have on the TV distribution. But when OTT came to the vogue, there was no entry barrier in terms of getting a license from anyone, even today, which is a great thing, actually, if you ask me. And the content, as we always say, and we have heard it enough, the content is always a little more liberal than TV. And that creates a dichotomy because as a legal team, you're looking at the same piece of content from two different lenses. The rules that apply on the television are entirely different on the digital. And the distribution of OTT platforms and its content is entirely different ball of game as compared to television.
Right.
So whether you have to distribute your content, when I speak of OTT, you can distribute it on a syndication basis, a standalone piece of content. You have to strategize where all you can put it, because it may just interfere with your other contracts, and we have thousands of contracts in place.
Right.
So you have to make sure that the legal safeguards are there. At the same time, when you do the app-to-app distribution, embedding of your app with another super app, or the API distribution of the content, these are highly complicated deals. To get them right in the structure, in the negotiation, in the drafting, requires some kind of a skill for a lawyer. And on the other hand, we know that when you have to distribute the content, by way of an example, It's a standardized contract with what we call the reference interconnect offer. Somebody has to download it and just sign it and send it, and voila, the signals are live. So when this transition to the OTT happened, the lawyers needed to adapt, and that adaptation came with its own challenges, because you have to switch from the television to the OTT. And sometimes the same lawyer is dealing with television and OTT, and then with practice, they are able to bifurcate that what is applicable for TV and digital. And the landscape is getting even all the more complicated, because now there's convergence. The same TV that we have been dealing separately and OTT separately, in the last few years, there has been increasingly convergence. And that requires another set of skill, business understanding for a lawyer to be able to get it right.
That's interesting, Ritesh, because so what this convergence has really made it very, very challenging, or made the GC's office, or the GC's role rather, the general counsel's role, even more challenging than it was, right? Now you're wearing the legal hat plus a business hat plus a risk hat as well, multiple hats all at the same time. You and your team need to really be ahead of the curve, so to speak, in order to manage and successfully navigate the environment that you find yourselves in, right? You know, if you were to look at how your role has evolved now the GC has more than a seat at the table. I think the GC is an indispensable part of, right, any CEO's office, right? I mean, the leadership team must have a GC who's really familiar, not just with the law, but also with the business. How do you now navigate this highly complex world where, you know, always on content, streaming, very different from the world where we lived a few years ago, right? I think, and that's the future. Whatever we have seen previously is slowly probably going to go into the history books or the archives. And streaming is really the world, current and future. What are some of the challenges that you and your team face in navigating this?
The role of the GC at the management level, as what I was referring to, is to be involved with the business strategy. And strategy is not coming from thin air. One fine day, somebody gets $1 million idea. It's always, a lot of deliberation goes in. Your market standing, ratings, who's your audience, how do you want to reach them. Very important for a general counsel to be involved in those strategy and deliberation meetings. And the purpose of the GC to be a part of those meetings is to identify the early potential red flags that could come from compliance, regulatory, or from the violations of the law. From the experience, it can happen.
Right.
Otherwise, those conversations are at a very high level. So that's probably one very important part of the role of a general counsel, how you partner with the business people and how you make your tangible contribution in those negotiations, not only from the risk mitigation point of view, because there's nothing which has come concrete, but every time letting the business know that this, if you go down this path, this could be some of the red flags that we may have to deal with, and can we maneuver around it, what you are doing if this were to fructify. That's one part of it. And when all the strategy and all the deliberations are put into motion, and that's where the other hat of the GC comes into play, that yes, the early red flags probably have been well taken care of, avoided, and now the product is about to come into the play. Script, for example. Either you can wash the content and say that this needs to be heavily edited and compromise on the creativity of the people who have so passionately created it, or you can get involved at the script level itself.
So the GC's office is actually now getting involved at the script level.
At the script level. So my team is reading the scripts to say that this religious overtone is not going to work out. Or you are probably using third-party brand name. We need to come up with a fictitious name. You are using some terms which are racist. You can't use those terms. And this all comes from many years of experience. So you need a hands-on kind of a team. In the last few years, ever since we have gone into the script, I think the number of edits have substantially reduced because you have taken care of a lot of things.
Yes.
And that's the other part. And Sony is extremely conscious of its brand identity, is very passionate about its consumers, users, subscribers, how they perceive us as a brand.
Yes.
How they, we have a great reputation to uphold. Sony, by the way, is consistently ranked as one of the top ethical brands. So we have a lot at stake. It's not only the compliance of the laws. So we get into whether this content could lead to some kind of a PR disaster, a negative feedback. So that's not concerned with the law or the regulations. You could be fined.
But is that something the legal folks are also looking?
Yes,
oh, wow, okay.
We get into that. That's
very interesting.
And we try to prevent. Obviously, there is a lot of conversation with the creative people. They're very passionate about what they're creating, and the experience plays an important role. So we draw parallels that, something which was done by our competitor was received with extreme negativity. Do we want to go down that way? And I think, the training by the GC and GC's office plays an important role, because if everybody is on the same page that we are working for Sony, we are an ethical company, we are extremely proud of the reputation that we carry in the minds of the consumers, it becomes a bit easier, but not always. Sometimes you have to negotiate.
Ritesh, I want to, one part of what you just said stayed with me in terms of IP and the importance of IP, right? And with the shelf life of content getting shorter, right? I mean, let's throw back to 30 years ago when Doordarshan had just a few pieces of content which you would probably watch on a Sunday or on a weekday, to today when there's so much content that you don't have time to even absorb or watch all of it, right? So clearly shelf life is shortening. Has your approach to intellectual property changed? And I'm asking this from a lawyer's perspective, right? As a lawyer, how are you approaching it? Are you taking a more business approach on IP clauses or IP provisions so that deals can happen quicker, faster? Would love to hear your thoughts on this.
So Anthony, we have evolved. Even before we entered into the contract, these things are pretty much well settled before, in principle, handshake is done with the other party. And legal plays an important role. So for each type of content, while the commercial is fronting the commercial negotiations, my team has a very important role to guide and mentor the commercial team. So legal becomes the sort of centerpiece which is helping the commercial teams to negotiate the commercials. Once the commercials are logged, it's just a matter of then documenting them. More sophisticated media companies have evolved from there, and they have now best practices in place where commercial team partners with the legal team to negotiate the commercials. I would say about 90% of the things are settled in commercial negotiations. Contracting becomes much easier.
Ritesh, I want to, segue a little bit into something that is a buzzword, especially these days: good governance, ethics, good governance, etc. And, it is often said that regulation plays catch up to innovation, right? You innovate first, and then regulators are always playing catch up, trying to figure out how to keep pace with innovation that's happening in an industry, right? From a good governance perspective, and purely from that perspective, how do you view, from your industry, media and OTT, and from this industry's perspective, how do you view good governance in today's day and age and time? What does it mean to you, and what's the lens from which you are looking at good governance for your industry, for your organization?
I think to answer that question, let's say, what is governance? Governance is a set of rules that you yourself make, how the company will go about doing its business,
right?
How it will treat its partners, employees, consumers, what will be the processes, policies, and SOPs to achieve all of that.
Sure.
And we all know that putting those rules, what we call the governance, is one part of it. implementing, enforcing, fixing the accountabilities, another part of it. How beautifully you execute all of that probably comes under the bracket of good governance. Now, good governance is also not only about the rules that you frame to comply with the laws and the regulations of the land, but also to establish trust and goodwill amongst your employees, how you're going to treat the employees on some of the matters, may not necessarily emanating from the laws. Your consumers, how you build that trust, what kind of practices you want to have, which will establish goodwill and trust amongst consumers, your partners, your subscribers, your viewers. And all of that, I think, is good governance. And how you fix the accountability, how you train everyone in a big organization to be on the same page is probably another example of good governance. Everybody has a code of conduct.
Yes.
How you go about implementing the code of conduct, how you bring everybody on board to say, this is how we're going to function, this is how we're going to do the business, this is what is expected out of us. It's a constant process. To have a code of conduct is one thing, and everybody understands what is this code of conduct, what is expected altogether. So that's another example of good governance.
Allied to that, I just wanted to maybe get your thoughts very quickly on the GC's role in upholding ethical standards. And I know that these two go hand in hand, right? The COC as well as the ethical standards of an organization. Could you share a little bit about that in terms of how you see the GC's office playing a pivotal role in this particular exercise?
No, look, a general counsel is the moral compass and the conscience of the organization. There are always no straight answers to everything. So, when you're in doubt, you need somebody to go to and say, what is the right thing to be done? It's not written somewhere. And that's where I think the ethics play an important role. How you continuously go about upholding the right thing to be done, even when nobody's watching, probably I would say qualify as very high ethical standards. We have the benefit of being a Sony-owned company, and Sony is, as I was mentioning, consistently on a world map being rated as one of the most ethical companies. Their practices, their learnings, we continue to absorb, and that becomes our path forward to implement all of that. And I think governance and ethics go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
If you're very high on governance, you will automatically have very high conscience, and the job of the general counsel becomes slightly easier. But there will be, gray areas that come your way where you will be asked what is the right thing to do.
And so you believe that in today's day and age, this understanding of governance, good governance and ethical behavior is critical for somebody who aspires to be a general counsel, especially of an MNC like Sony, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's less legal about it, but it is so integrally associated with the practice that you have had on the various laws and the regulations, which make you a perfect fit to be the custodian of the ethical standards and the governance. And that's where you would see all the big companies in India and outside, they would always park the ethics and the governance with the general counsel's office to say that he or she could be the best moral compass and the conscience keeper.
Ritesh, one of the areas that, and again, coming back to, the good old days when legal was painted as a department of or the department that actually slows things down, right? Today, if, on one hand, an organization needs to manage risk, which fundamentally in most organizations sits with the general counsel. At the same time, organizations are also living in a world where they have to take big, bold bets, big risks, right? You've got to really sort of go all in sometimes on transactions, put all your chips into the game, so to speak. How do you balance the two? I mean, that really is I feel like one of the core aspects of being a very, very successful general counsel, right? Balancing the two, risk as well as helping the organization take big, bold bets and take giant strides forward?
I think in those kind of situations, the experience of a general counsel would always be, what is the most critical? You cannot get 10 out of 10 things in a contract, in a high-stake contract negotiation. What is the most critical thing that you want, without which probably the deal is not going to get closed at your end? And the ability to identify the real risk or the real advantage that you want to have in that contract very early on when the deal is about to be closed, and the areas that you really identify as the real risks and differentiate from the theoretical or hypothetical risks which lawyers love to come up with, you should be in a position to guide the management to close the deals fairly quickly. You can't negotiate everything when you have equally competent lawyer on the other side.
It can't be a stalemate, otherwise it'll become a stalemate.
Otherwise, this contract negotiation will go on forever.
And lawyers love doing that sometimes.
Oh yes. I mean, they love to. I'm no exception to that. When you are in the middle of that negotiation and it's heated up, and you love to write those beautiful emails, beautiful comments in the margins of the red line document, all of that happens. But as long as the general counsel and the team mentored by him keeps the goal in mind that I'm not able to negotiate everything out of it, and you have aligned your business partner with that why it is critical, and they are backing you up, that's when the deal gets closed to your advantage.
Ritesh, increasingly the General Counsel's office, and I'm sure yours is no exception, you're potentially or possibly advising the CEO/MD, the C-suite, the board even, right, on a frequent basis. What advice would you have for young lawyers, aspiring to get to the GC's position? How would you say that this is how you should, how do you do it? And if you could share your insights or from your experience, what's worked, what's not, and then what would your advice be for a young, aspiring, hungry lawyer who's looking to sort of make it as in-house counsel or a general counsel in an organization like Sony?
Probably one thing that has really helped me to reach to this position is ambition. I have been always very ambitious. Ambitious is good if it is going to yield something for you.
Sure.
As long as you're putting the right effort. Because if you're ambitious, you need to work harder. You need to have the perseverance to continuously to be at it, the ability to strike partnerships, the ability to understand the business, because business is very complex. Lawyers are not prepared naturally to be businessmen because their training is very different.
Very different.
And you have to break that shell to say that I want to be a lawyer and I want to understand the business. I want to understand the P&L. So I think these are some of the things that I consistently implemented. And I think most of them hold true for any young lawyer. Lawyers need to be passionate if they really want to work in an in-house environment and aspire to become the general counsel. Hard work.
Passion, hard work, ambition.
And the ability to go that extra mile to understand the business that they are supporting. Very important. Without business understanding, you will be not as effective as one would expect you to be.
You can't be rigid and look at only the letter of the law and say, this is it, ab yahi karo. That doesn't work. Exactly. That attitude will not work. So you have to be flexible. Understanding the business is key. Ritesh, I know the Sony entire portal and everything is GDPR compliant. The organization is GDPR compliant. And now we have also got the Indian DPDP Act. The Act is in place. The rules will hopefully shortly be out. What's your approach now from a legal and risk management perspective to data privacy? Right now you've got the EU law, you've got the Indian law. How are you approaching the entire data privacy and data protection subject in this world that we live in today?
So no, we are in a good position, Anthony, because we are GDPR compliant, as you just said, and that took us about 2.5 years to get GDPR compliant. When we were launching Sony Live in the EU, because it's a gold standard GDPR.
Yes.
Once you are compliant with that, your architecture, your product's architectures, and the foundational elements and the policies are compliant with that, it becomes much easier. But we know that DPDPA has certain extraordinary features in it which go over and above the DPDPA. But that's all fine. I'm not that concerned about the consent manager. I'm not concerned about the data localization or the verified parental consent. You will get it.
Do the fines scare you?
Once you are GDPR compliant, which talks about much more than
It's
that.
a higher standard, you feel?
It's a much higher standard. But look, your focus should not be on the fine. Your focus should be on the confidence that you want to achieve
Yes.
by being compliant with the laws. But I am more concerned about the attitude of people towards data. And I think that will be the biggest challenge that we will face in implementing this law. Now, whether it is the collection of the data or the processing or the warehousing of the data, because a lot of time we are collecting the data without even knowing what they're going to do with it.
Right.
And that nonchalant attitude is going to be the biggest barrier in the implementation of this law by the companies. And that's where we started early on. We're doing the gap analysis, foundational elements, changing the architecture of our products, websites, policies. That will happen. But to my way of thinking, the attitude of the people need to change. Now, today a bank runner will come, can you give me Aadhaar, passport, and PAN? But why do you need Aadhaar and passport? No, sir, give it anyway because
I'll just collect all of it.
I will just collect all of it. Now, even he doesn't understand that you cannot be asking the same document. So Aadhaar will serve the purpose for your identification and your address, and the passport has the same purpose. But they will ask you nevertheless.
Collect everything anyway.
Now, the bank is compliant with the GDPR. They are already getting compliant with the DPDPA, but they haven't worked on the attitude of the people, which is very casual about data collection. And that's where we started very early on. We made a game, interactive game, and rolled it out to the employees. And the purpose of the game was to tell them that how important the data is, and the sensitization about, why we should be thinking twice what data you want to collect. What is the purpose that you want this data to be processed? Don't warehouse the data. And if you have collected the data in the past, which you are not using, you got to purge it. So in my view, laws will keep on coming and all companies with the strong intent will implement it. The debate is over. The process of giving comments, counter comments is all over, and we'll see what kind of rules come in and what kind of gestation period is given for the companies to get compliant. Our objective is obviously to be compliant on day number 1 without using the gestation period which the government would be willing to give. But my focus currently is also equally on changing the attitude of the employees towards the data.
So, Ritesh, what you are recommending is a very strong training-led approach, right?
Yeah.
Education, training, learning, all with respect to data protection and data privacy, because after all, you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? So what you're really saying is train. Get your entire workforce trained on the data protection law so that everybody, whether through gamification like you've very interestingly done, or any other means, but ensure that rigorous training is what you're recommending, essentially.
And now is the time.
And now is the time.
Because once a law comes into force, you will be training them how to comply with the law.
Yes.
Now is the time to make people realize
conceptually
why you should not be sharing your data. Without thinking twice.
Understood.
And why you should not be collecting the data without having the central purpose for which you want to collect.
Correct.
How it will be processed. Who Who will process your data? And please don't warehouse the data. If you do not have a purpose to collect the data, do not collect it. And I have seen everywhere that companies are collecting the data. There's no harm in collecting the data. Let's collect it in any ways. We'll see whether we will use it or not. And that approach has to change.
Agreed. That sweep everything in approach has to definitely go out of the window. Ritesh, I just want to sort of switch tracks a little bit to talk a little bit about what everybody is talking about now, which is really our present. It's not even the future any longer, AI. And with the kind of AI-generated content that one is seeing, with potential liability, again, in this world, there is no regulation as such, regulating AI at this point of time. Yet, we are headed in that direction because, again, like I said previously, innovation is first and then regulation always plays catch up. So, how do you see the next, let's say, even 5 years? I'm not even on 15, 20, 30 years. Next 5 years, what is the regulatory and legal landscape looking like from your perspective, from where you're sitting?
In my industry.
In your industry, and of course, if you want to take a couple minutes more to also sort of where the world is headed, would be great to hear your views on that as well.
OTT will continue to grow at a very healthy rate. We'll see more and more technologies coming in and converging with OTT, and not only television. Generative AI will have a significant role to play in. We are already witnessing a lot of things directly or indirectly getting influenced by GAI. And the dangerous part is that we currently have no control over that GAI. We cannot simply rely on the Copyright Act or the Information Technology Act, which do not even envisage this kind of huge technological leap in humankind. So that will pose a lot of challenges when GAI is more and more getting integrated in the next 5 years. How the regulators and how the judiciary will interpret all of this, unless there's a law that comes about to regulate the GAI, which
is likely, I'm guessing.
I think in our industry, and perhaps it's true for some of the more organized industries elsewhere also, that regulation will have a much bigger role to play. The existing laws will have to be relied and interpreted by judiciary unless the government swiftly puts in place another law to regulate that innovative part which has stemmed from the existing technologies. Altogether new technology comes. Technology will be at its peak in the next 2 to 3 years, not even 5 years, in all areas of our interaction, be it consumerism, be it interaction with the fellow human being. All facets of our lives will be hugely
impacted,
entrenched in the technology. And there will be laws and regulations coming to regulate all of that. So this landscape that we are looking at in the media entertainment, even outside, is going to be heavily dominated by regulations, because regulations are easy to bring in as compared to laws. So
you'd advocate, if you were to advise the government on this, you would advocate a light touch regulation for AI?
I would think that GAI would probably need a regulation which could be light touch but complements the Copyright Act.
Okay. You see the copyright aspect or the intellectual property aspect as the one area that GAI is going to fundamentally touch upon the most.
Yeah.
Right? Particularly from your perspective,
from my
your industry
perspective, yes.
Okay. Ritesh, you've had a fascinating sort of career, and I feel like we could speak for another few hours, but I realize that we have to wind down our conversation. So I wanted to sort of ask you, as you reflect back on your, past few years as in-house counsel, now GC, your career, are there 1 or 2 or even 3, if you'd like, pivotal moments in your life where you decided to sort of pivot one way or the other that has had a critical impact on where you are today? It's got you to where you are because those moments happened. Even one would do, but if you have more, please feel free to share. I think, and the reason I'm asking this, Ritesh, is because for somebody who's as accomplished and successful as you are, what you share could potentially end up inspiring other, legal professionals who might say, okay, fine, this is how Ritesh Khosla has moved up and these are the decisions he's made while moving up. Maybe there's something I could learn from it.
There are many
Just one,
moments.
just one.
We're getting into the Sony Live launch. And the way I advocated my case that I should be doing it along with the business, it was an informal pitch to the business head who was supposed to be now becoming the business head of Sony Live. And to my boss at that point in time, who was gracious enough to listen to me and said that, yes, okay, because I was always very hungry. I wanted to do more and more and more. And I would fight for every piece available on the table.
Every opportunity you sort of fought for and grabbed.
Because very early on, one of our very seasoned lawyers who I always looked upon, he told me that if you want to grow, you need to handle more. And when you're handling more, handle it properly and make a mark. Only then you can grow. Otherwise, you will start stagnating. And I always believe that this OTT is going to become really big. We are talking about 2012 or 2013, if I'm not mistaken. I was very early in my career, especially in Sony. And I had the confidence to go around and, sort of make my pitch that I can do it. I think that really helped me to get into this OTT space right at the inception, at least from a Sony's point of view. We were the first OTT player. We never scaled up at that point in time. It took us some time to really scale it up, but we were indeed the first one to do that. And the other one was when the first M&A opportunity came about. And again, at that point in time, I was a little more established in the Sony system that I should be given the opportunity because I knew if I would do it perfectly, the second M&A opportunity would also come in. And precisely that happened. So I think sometimes if there is anything to be learned from these two moments is that don't be complacent. Try to do more. And when you do more, your horizon will expand and people will start seeing you very differently. And I think if I were to summarize how I went about these two pivot moments is that I wanted to take on.
Fabulous. Ritesh, this has been a fantastic conversation. And as we wrap up, I just want to ask you one last question, which is, you're a leader. You lead a team of professionals, legal professionals and other professionals as general counsel. What would you say is your leadership mantra? Maybe just one leadership mantra that you can share with our viewers, your leadership style or your leadership mantra. What is it that makes Ritesh Khosla tick as a leader?
I think I'm very good at striking partnerships with the business, and you should be able to demonstrate to the business that I am there by your side to add tangible value to what you are doing. I'm your ally.
That's when you become a real partner.
That's when you become a real partner, and that's when you feel that you have earned a seat at the table.
At the table. Wonderful. Ritesh, on that very, very sort of positive note, I want to thank you for making time for this conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and I think I've learned a fair bit from you as well. And I think our viewers will definitely take a lot away from this conversation. And I look forward to more conversations where we can actually maybe dive deeper into some of the topics that we have only touched upon, but we can go actually deeper into some of those topics. Thank you so much, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.